the whole day preparing for this test by finding all the materials that I would need. For months, I'd been taking the practice test and reading the practice book. I was more than prepared for this test. During the test, I was confident that I was doing well, but I was disappointed to find out that I made a very average score. I continued to study and practice for the test, but every time I made the exact same score. I had practiced this test 100 times, but I was never able to better my score. There are many students just like me dealing with the troubles that come along with the ACT. The toughness and unfairness of the ACT is affecting students and their ability to enter secondary schools and the amount of funding that they are receiving. Have you taken the ACT at this point in your life? If yes, how well did you think that you did? Were you satisfied with the score that you received? Did you feel rushed during the test? And did this rushed feeling cause you to feel nervous? Did you think the questions were appropriate and fair? These are just some of the questions people have regarding the ACT. According to abouteducation.com, in 2012, 52% of high school graduates registered for and took the ACT test at least one time during their sophomore, junior, or senior year. The average score for all these students was a 21. The ACT and its scores affect a student's ability to enter secondary schooling and the amount of funding that they will receive. I will now take this time to explain to you some of the problems with the ACT, and I will then point out some solutions that could fix these problems that affect students. I have taken the ACT a total of 5 different times, and I have made the exact same composite score every time I took the test. I took these tests over a 4-year period. Even though I matured through high school and gained knowledge on the subjects of English, math, science, and reading, my score remained the same each time. I was unable to better my score on the ACT, which resulted in the loss of funding for me from the school I have planned to attend. According to ehow.com, the ACT focuses on concrete content rather than more abstract skills. This means that you need to know specific information it is asking you rather than more broad-based critical thinking skills. Therefore, if you are extremely good at processing info but not have exposed to the particular info being tested, your ACT is not going to be a very good indicator of your intelligence. I will now discuss some of the problems with the ACT and present solutions for these problems. Now that you know we are discussing the ACT and are aware of the toughness of the test, I will explain to you some of the problems with the standardized test. The problems of the ACT make it an unfair test, and these problems directly affect students. The test makers of the ACT admit that high school grades predict first-year college grades better than ACT scores. In fact, adding the ACT to a high school record does not significantly improve predictions. According to fairtest.org, the individual tests of language, math, reading, and science have large margins of error, according to data from the ACT. There's a big chance that an individual score could be off. Despite its inaccuracies and biases, ACT scores are used to determine entrance into schools and scholarships given. A single point can decide whether a student is admitted or receives needed funds. Now that some of the problems of the ACT have been discussed, I can now point out some valuable solutions to these problems. There are some reasonable ways to correct the problems caused by the unfairness of the ACT. I will discuss these solutions now. Colleges and universities could look at a student's GPA from the 4 years spent in high school, since it is a better prediction of college success. If a secondary school were to focus on a student's high school GPA instead of an ACT score, they would see a student's real abilities. The ACT should be of less importance regarding admissions into college. Colleges should not choose to admit or not to admit a student based on one bad ACT score. Colleges could use ACT scores to determine funds only. The ACT has some problems, but there are solutions that could really benefit all students. Now let's take this time to review the problems of the ACT and the solutions. The ACT is not the best way to predict a student's success in college, and the makers of the ACT test claim that it isn't. The scoring of the test could be off, which cheats students. The problem can be solved by making this test of less importance regarding admissions into schools. To sum everything up, the ACT is affecting the lives of many young people who are trying to enter college. The average score on the ACT is a 21, which for most schools doesn't meet the requirements for admission. This test doesn't gauge a student's success in college, and the toughness and unfairness of the ACT has affected students in their ability to enter secondary schooling and the amount of funding that they receive. After I have presented the problems of the ACT and presented reasonable solutions, I hope that you see that the ACT is an unfair judgment of success in college.